Welcome to another episode of IndieSponge. This week, we get news that Jeff Nichols is going to begin pre-production, obviously, on a new project called Yankee Commandante. Kevin, are we excited by anything, Jeff Nichols?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, he's one of my favorite American filmmakers working right now, and this project is a little more exciting because he's once again working with Adam Driver, who he first worked with on Midnight Special. So this is really great news, especially coming off the back of he was working on Alien Nation over at Fox, which is going to be his big, his probably one of the bigger movies he would have ever made. But that sort of fell by the wayside after the Fox Disney merger. So it's good that he's back soon, quickly with something else. So it's very exciting.
So Yankee Commandant is it's taken from a New Yorker article, and it's based during the Revolution era in Cuba. So it's going to be a period piece. I don't believe we'd see any flashback episodes or anything of the sort because a lot of the characters, um, real life people that were in this larger story, do survive. There is a legacy, if you will, to different character set. So I imagine this will be set in stone and set around that 60s era. Let's talk a little bit about the person that'll. So it's based on this article. Let's talk about the writer actually.
Sure. So it's written by David Gran, who has who has been sort of a quiet force in Hollywood a little bit. He wrote the book that became The Lost City of Z. He wrote the article that became The Old Man and the Gun, and his book Killer of the Flower Moon is Killers of the Flower Moon is going to be Martin Scorsese's next picture if someone decides to pay $200 million for that budget. But yeah, I mean, he's a very, very well respected writer. So it'll be, and he always finds like an interesting pockets of history to talk about. So I think this will be a fascinating tale from a period that's been pretty well covered in Hollywood. This is a favorite subject for a lot of filmmakers.
So this character is actually I went through the New Yorker article really quickly because it'll take half a day to read. But apparently he was known as a Holden Caulfield with a machine gun. A lot of people thought of him as not a double agent but a triple agent. So it's about this man from Ohio that befriends the people that were in the mountains fighting for the revolution. When I saw the news and I saw Grant's name attached, I was thinking, oh, this is going to be soaked in a really interesting period. And I was thinking of another Adam who's attached to the project, and Adam Stone, who has such a strong presence for in terms of Jeff Nichols' visual language. How do you think that participation might occur? It hasn't been confirmed that Adam Stone's on the project, but we can pretty much guess that after 5 feature films together, that'll be the case. So what do you think about
Uh,
in the
yeah,
landscape?
yeah. I mean, the Cuban Revolution. What else is there to say? It lends itself to a lot of rich imagery, a lot of provocative imagery. So I presume they will be working together again, and it'll be a bigger canvas for him as well.
Hmm.
So I think this is a really cool opportunity for both of them um, to step up their talents on a bigger surface. So yeah, we'll see.
And worth mentioning, this project actually surfaced a couple of years back, and they didn't mention it in today's article. But yeah.
Yeah, so it triggered the name sort of like for whatever reason triggered a memory in the back of my brain. So several years ago, this was supposed to be a George Clooney project. He was set up to direct. He was going to produce through his Smokehouse Pictures, and I guess for whatever reason, it just never happened. And I presume the rights lapsed as well because it's no longer there. So what could have been? What could have been? But But I'm glad it's landed with Jeff Nichols for sure. Because yeah, I'm just glad to have a new film. But it'll be a while. It's not shooting till 2021, so patience.
Final question: do you think there'll be a part for Michael Shannon?
I think if Michael Shannon wants a part, there'll be something for him. Yeah, I don't want to see that bromance end anytime soon.
Well said. We both obsess over the film festival calendar year. This week, two beloved summertime film festivals with a loving public, adoring public, essentially kiboshed or hara-carried themselves. Karlovy and Locarno are skipping 2020, at least the public format. So, what are your initial reactions, and are we looking at a doomed fall festival season?
I think if anything, we're looking at a drastically altered fall festival season. I know that Telluride added a day in the hopes of trying to spread out their screenings, and TIFF is still being a little cagey on what they're going to do, and Venice seems to think they will plow forward as if nothing's happened. But I think what we're all seeing, and we'll continue to see, are these festivals realizing that the idea of full screening rooms, of attendance being what it was last year, of celebrities traveling and directors and producers, it's just not going to happen. Um, so I think what we're seeing with Locarno and Karlovy is some very real adjustments being made to address what's going on.
So, I know that Locarno is not necessarily shutting off all the lights. They are going to be proactive with some market and production type activities.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also got news this week that Fantasia is actually going about their edition in a very strategic way. And it's a festival that's both close to us and genre film festival fans around the world. Perhaps we can delve into a little bit of what they're doing, and is it really skin in the game for them, seeing that they only do get a handful of world premieres?
So Fantasia is a pretty big event here in Montreal every year, because it is really about the audience participation in the films and in the Q&As. It's very known for that, for having a really good energy. But the clever thing they've done is they're moving it online for about 2 weeks. They're still going to have world premieres. They're still going to have a lot of films from around the world. But what they're doing is selling a limited amount of tickets for each screening. I believe between 6 and 1,200 tickets. And screenings will all be geo-locked to Canada. So it's offering a protection to filmmakers that their work won't be pirated or somehow leak. And it's a way of creating that sort of communal experience in an online setting. So it's a bit of a roll of the dice, but I mean, credit to them. It's a way to keep the vibe of the festival going, even if everyone can't be in the same room at the same time.
And finally, there's this initiative put together by one of the co-heads of the programming team at Tribeca, that sort of like got together and created a Bandaid solution for all these film festivals called We Are One. Are we just going to get a rehash of some of the film festival favorites for this YouTube deal?
So this is a film festival that's going to be going on YouTube with, collaboration from Tribeca, Toronto, Cannes, and a handful of other festivals to bring some programming to YouTube, I guess, with a festival vibe. I think it's a nice thing. I don't think we're going to see, Terrence Malick's next movie premiere on YouTube. But what are your thoughts? Is this what do you think this will look like? What do you think the programming might be? This is what, 10 days, I think, and 10 hours a day or something like that?
So it's starting off end of May, beginning of June for about a week or so. And I imagine there's just going to be so many rights issues. So they're going to want to pick films that are safe films that perhaps have that film festival laurel stamp. But as far as seeing any new material, that's not going to happen. As far as seeing perhaps old classics that have been refurbished, that reworked on, as you know, maybe not In the Mood for Love, but stuff that the Martin Scorsese Foundation has worked on, or Park Circus, or anything that's going to go down Criterion. Perhaps they will see something where they can monetize and support the all these film festival brands. But as far as seeing anything new, I don't see what the interest is in here. And personally, it's just as it's an exercise in futility.
Wow. I don't know if it's futile. I think that I think it's a nice gesture. I think it's a nice way to remind people of where some of these movies started. So as you were speaking, what popped to mind is something like Juno, for example, or Little Miss Sunshine. These kind of like these sort of these little indie films that became sensations of their time because they had that festival buzz. And I think that's probably the kind of programming that this will have, is those kind of like wide-reaching films that got their start as conversation pieces at these festivals.
This week, sort of like double news item for one specific title. The King of Staten Island, which was supposed to get a June 19th release with Universal, sort of like there's plans that have been put together so that audiences, either Apatow fans or Pete Davidson fans, can get to see the film, and Universal on the other end can continue testing a model which is sort of like being looked at by the industry in large. Kevin, so let's talk about the industry facet. So the big deal with this is that they're using a model that was used for Trolls World Tour, that 90-day window thing. What are your first thoughts about all this hoopla and all this ink that's been spilt over, or spilt milk over this title?
So yeah, it's been an interesting week or so. So Trolls World Tour did phenomenal numbers for Universal as a premium VOD release, as a $20 rental. It racked up hundreds of millions by parents looking to distract their children for at least 90 minutes during this pandemic. And King of Staten Island, which was slated to be South by Southwest, big premiere, big opening film. Now Universal, that festival got shuttered, and Universal has decided, hey, why not? Instead of pushing this back, we are going to put this on premium VOD as well. And this immediately raised the ire of the cinema chains, AMC in particular, causing a big row over just how films are released during this time. And it's tricky. I mean, I get it. There's two sides. There's the studios who have an investment to protect, and there are cinemas who are really trying to make sure that when they reopen, it's in a landscape they recognize and not one where audiences are now just used to plunking down $20 at home instead of taking that $20 to the cinema. So how do you feel? How do you see this as just a blip? Do you see this as something that's going to be more and more common?
And so what I thought was the more interesting part for me was actually how Apatow and Pete Davidson put together a Lars von Trier type of trailer. I thought that was really amusing. So they're playing with the fact that they're stuck in confinement, that this is a way that they can reach out and find their audience.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's ingenuity in just in the marketing of the film as well. So I think there's a fun aspect to take away from this. But is this going to be commonplace? I don't think so. Once everything is back to normal, things will go back to normal, and this experiment 1999 thing will be a thing of the past.
I also think, I think this is a case by case basis too. Universal saw huge. Was Trolls World Tour Universal? Or was it DreamWorks? I can't remember. Anyway, Trolls World Tour. This is gonna bug me. Hang on a second. Probably got that wrong.
I think it's Universal.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, it is. Okay. Let me just start over. Okay. I just think this is going to be a case-by-case situation. Trolls World Tour did great numbers. Who knows what King of Staten Island will turn around? Will people want to pay $20 for a Pete Davidson movie? Who can say? Well, I mean, we don't know. So it'll be interesting, and I think Universal is not making any claim one way or the other, but what the future looks like. I think between Trolls World Tour, King of Staten Island, Invisible Man, which they rushed to VOD as this pandemic was starting. And that we don't know the numbers on, and so I think they're going to try these test cases out, see what the results are. But I think at the end of the day, the theatrical model as we know it will change a bit for both sides of this situation.
And this week it was announced that the radio silence filmmaker trio are attached to direct and produce a best-selling novel that's in the line of the other Swedish crime thriller series that now the name, I forget the name.
Alpha Dragon Tattoo.
There you go. The world and all these Scandi serial pieces. And they've attached a fearless actress on board. So yeah, let's dig further into this headline. The movie or film or book is called The Ice Beneath Her. So what's the deal? What's the 411 on this?
So we have a thriller that's apparently in the vein of Gone Girl or Girl on the Train, with the intriguing casting of Daisy Ridley in the lead role. So this will be something a bit removed from the Star Wars universe for sure. And the Ready or Not, or not Ready or Not, the Radio Silence filmmakers are just coming off Ready or Not, which for me is one of the more underrated horror thrillers of last year. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. A great ride. So it's an interesting combination of talent for sure.
So it was originally packaged by the folks at New Line. So it was a studio film. We can imagine the price tag for this. Now it goes to STX. STX do world sales as well as distribute films. And so I was looking at the rap sheet, if you will, for Ridley, and she basically just knows the Star Wars world, and she does come across as as that fearless heroine. I was looking at the DNA of the character that she might play. So Camilla Greeb's 2015 novel on which this project is based on, like you said, Girl on a Train, Gone Girl are reference points. Emma is a lonely retail worker who's experienced a troubled upbringing. So we're looking at a character that is untrustworthy, that might have some darker elements to her. Do you think this the type of career move that Daisy that's beneficial to Daisy, who's just been stuck to these larger studio project anthology?
Yeah, I mean, she does have the forever in post production chaos walking whenever that decides to come out, but it feels like that one may never see the light of day given what's been going on with that film. And she did do Ophelia in between, again, like a small film that didn't really make waves. But this feels like it could be a breakout breakout character for her, something that's again like very different than Star Wars and probably geared towards an older audience. So yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I mean, the Radio Silence team got an amazing performance out of Samara Weaving in Ready or Not. Like she is was an absolute force in that film. So a lot of potential here for Daisy Ridley to put out just a really memorable, different kind of performance.
Great. So that bar is raised a little bit high, and see she can work her acting muscles instead of the green screen theatrics. So this week we got news that HBO Max, that new entity which officially launches next month or in the month of May, um, picked up a project that was originally housed with Sony, and they put it together. It's called An American Pickle, and it features Seth Rogen in dual parts, and it's based on a New Yorker um, article, fiction, obviously. Um, Kevin, what do we know about the filmmaker?
So the filmmaker is Brandon Trost, who is a longtime cinematographer, and at least for me, like someone who has shot some really good films, but still somehow flown under the radar. So he shot Can You Ever Forgive Me and Diary of a Teenage Girl for Marielle Heller, and both of those movies just look really, really good. He's been part of the whole Seth Rogen, James Franco crew. So he shot uh, Disaster
Yeah.
Artists, Neighbors, I believe. He did Pop Star, Never Stop, Never Stopping. So he's done like drama. He's done comedy. He's done some TV with Barry and the Righteous Gemstones. And he's attached to the upcoming Sesame Street movie, which is a big project as well. So this is his first directorial outing, but he's certainly no newbie.
So this project was filmed in November, December of 2018. And it's, again, based on a 2013 New Yorker article, a story. And what's fun is that Seth Rogen, and I could very much see him have fun with the parts. It's actually two parts. And so early 20th century version, um, a man who gets stuck in a pickle vat or jar meets his great grandson, or his grandson, I should say, who's a computer geek. And so you'll have Rogan play these two figures.
How do they meet?
That's a good question. I didn't read the entire short story, but I did read the introduction of the moment where the the older Rogan figure, he goes to a Whole Foods type setting and purchases a potato, and all the follies and fallouts of that. And
But he's been like asleep for 100 years, right? So that's
so yeah, so
yeah,
he's hungry maybe, and maybe he smells the pickle juice. Who knows? But
right.
um, so it'll be interesting to see Rogan don makeup and whatnot and all that garb and get into two time periods in one frame. Um, what does this say about HBO Max? Are they moving into the game? They're mostly focused on series, but they had Bad Education. They have Soderbergh's Let Them All Talk at some point this year. What do you think about HBO Max and their launch and them grabbing this entity, this project?
I mean, it's not a big shock. I mean, just like every other streaming service, they're hungry for content, particularly as they're coming up to a launch. The bigger story is why perhaps Sony let this movie go. Um, it makes you wonder if they thought it was commercially viable enough to hang on, or maybe put on VOD themselves. But clearly, they were happy to let it live somewhere else. So that'll be interesting. What if there's any backstory to that? Um, so yeah, I mean, particularly now, I mean, we've seen Netflix take on Lovebirds. That was with Paramount. and now HBO grabbing a Sony project. I think we're going to see more of this over the next few months as studios weigh um, what product is worth hanging on to for a theatrical release once people can go to cinemas again, in which they feel more comfortable letting go and just saying, we can cut our losses here and get an acquisition fee and move on.
Riley Stearns, who's been a prominent indie figure on the South by and Sundance type landscape, who gave us already 2 films that have performed pretty well for smaller indie films. He's latched on to a perhaps bigger sci-fi project. It's called Duel, and it's packaged by the XYZ Films people, who they've got their finger on the pulse in terms of genre films, in terms of experimental, larger public type items, original ideas. So just your random thoughts on the Riley Stearns' career so far, who's done Faults and The Art of Defense.
So Riley Stearns is a filmmaker who I think has been pretty underrated. He always finds sort of an interesting genre take on his 2 features: Faults, which was about someone trying to deprogram a cult member, and last year's The Art of Self-Defense, which was sort of this sort of brilliant take apart of toxic masculinity. I think both of those films show a really, really distinct voice. And so what excites me about Duel is that it's a elevated, it's a sci-fi picture, but coming from Riley Stearns, it's going to be something different. And the premise is really cool. It's about a woman with a terminal ill disease who clones herself, but the twist is actually she survives, but her clone is already now out in the world. So a huge opportunity to do something really, really fun, really, really inventive with that premise. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've seen him rise on the festival circuit as well.
Yeah, I remember him with Cub at Sundance. I think it was 2014, I want to say. What I do appreciate is that he has memorable characters. They're always cut out. They're branded differently from what we usually see. They speak differently, and there's always memorable scenes, the type of scenes they want to quote or they want to rewind to and watch a second or third time. He's got a sort of like noirish humor. Let's talk about, so there was a casting announcement as well. Jesse Eisenberg is part of the fabric of this film, but won't have top billing. There's Martha Kelly, who had a fun little part in Marriage Story. She's the one that came to visit Adam Driver's character when he's got a misfortune. He's got that accident with his finger, and we have Aaron Paul. But the lead character is we find actress Karen Gillan. What can you say about her? I'm not really familiar with her crossover Marvel and Guardians of the Galaxy role. What's the lowdown on what this can do for her, and what are what kind of tool belt does she,
I don't think it's really what the film can do for her or what. Yeah, I think it's more. This is just going to be a really cool meeting of a filmmaker who crafts memorable characters, and an actress who'll probably have something really cool to work with. Mary Elizabeth Winstead had a really, really great lead role in Faults. It was just a really well written piece. And Riley Stearns did the same for Jesse Eisenberg and Imogen Poots and The Art of Self-Defense. So I think it's just it's always exciting when you see when you have a filmmaker who can really craft these unique characters. And now that he has Karen Gillan, who you're right, she's been in a lot of blockbusters and tentpole films, Avengers and Jumanji and things like that. When you have her, when you have Aaron Paul as well, I just think it's going to be really, really interesting to see what they're given to play with.
So potentially we can expect a Denis Villeneuve's Enemy, but with a funny bone, perhaps.
That's a good way to put it. Or maybe the Double with more of a sci-fi twist.
Cool. So major news this week is the Academy Awards people, the governing body, got together, made decisions about having a more ecologically friendly way about going about screeners, but they also expanded the rules and lifted sort of like that 1 week LA or New York thing,
Qualifying run,
which made me think about a whole bunch of different scenarios. So I'm going to pitch you the scenario, and perhaps you can inform me on how that would pan out for a film. So let's say you're A24, and you have a future Moonlight that, if we look back, Moonlight was launched at Telluride, it went to TIFF, and I think a release date was figured out during that 2-week radius. So let's first talk about the new Academy rules and how that affects how people go about announcing and releasing projects.
So yeah, the new Academy rule is films that are streaming that debut on streaming can qualify for the Oscars, but they have to have had a planned theatrical release. So this language has caused a lot of confusion and conversation because it isn't very clear. But to me, that means if I'm A24 and I have a film, let's say I have the upcoming Jennifer Lawrence film, I see a scenario where, let's say in the next few weeks, A24 announces that this Jennifer Lawrence film will come out on October 1st. And then, given the situation of the world, we move ahead a couple months and they realize, you know what, we can't, there's just no way we're going to be able to release this theatrically. We've decided to pivot and now it's going to debut on Netflix. So in that scenario, they planned for a theatrical release. Wasn't able to happen for XYZ reason. It's on streaming. It's still eligible for an Oscar. So yeah, it is. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I think we're going to see a lot of announcements over the next month or two for fall release dates. Whether or not those hold, I don't know.
So they put also into place like a fallback plan in terms of the scope of the venues for that 1 week qualifying run. They added Chicago, they added Atlanta, but they also added Miami. I don't know if those are safeguards against the COVID second wave, but I think it's interesting that they selected those areas, pretty much first Sierra markets. Is that a way for them to like protect the rule set that they've always worked with?
You mean in picking these different cities?
Sure.
I just think it's a way to, because listen, the other factor here that I think they're trying to protect against is the fact that in a normal year, the fall festivals, all the critics, all the awards people, they're traveling. They're going to TIFF. They're going to Telluride. The reality is this year that's not happening. And so I think what they're trying to do is set up enough places in the country where if you're an awards blogger and there's no way you're going to fly to Toronto or you're not going to attend AFI or New York Film Festival, that in your city, or if you're close to Atlanta, you can drive to Atlanta and see these films in a qualifying run. So I think they're just trying to create more opportunities for these films to get seen. And I think the flip side to that as well is the decision to move away from DVD screeners at all to just a virtual screening room. How do you feel about that decision?
Well, I'm not one that's big on having an ecological footprint. I'm really fine without owning physical media. Um, this is not really like screeners is not really physical media in the sense that having a normal collection is. I think a lot of people enjoy receiving those packages and being inundated with it. I know that I enjoy seeing what Jeff Wells unpackages, but yeah, it's just silly and annoying, and it's a smart way to go about it. Does that mean there's going to be more pirating? I'm not sure, but that streaming platform will cost a good chunk of change. I don't know whether it's to the benefit of the studios. It's about 12 grand. Um, Perhaps that's about the same cost as issuing and mailing all these DVD screeners. Who knows?
I think it'll. I agree with you. I think it's been very wasteful. I mean, we've seen. I mean, we're both on Twitter, and so we see every fall everyone tweeting the pictures of their various envelopes and things they get. But the reality is, no one's watching all of those movies that come in. So I think it will create, what it does create now is a bigger challenge for PR people to get people to log on to this website and click play on like whatever Romanian film is the is the contender this year for that country, or whatever obscure documentary that they hope gains traction. Like, would someone like something like Honeyland, for example, that really needed a lot of people behind it to get viewed, to get votes. But at least there was a physical screener. At least there was a festival season to get that buzz. But what happens now? What happens in this scenario? So I think it's going to be, the PR game is going to be very, very different now too.
Those are really good points. I had not considered that. It's certainly they're very instrumental in making sure that a Parasite does pick up a win. So yeah, it'll be a lot of head scratching on the part of publicists. And that's that. Hi, I'm Eric Lavallée. I'm editor-in-chief and site owner for IonCinema.com, and this is
Kevin Jagernauth, contributing writer for the playlist.
And together we are IndieSponge.